Well, hey there, we're going to be going over the rules of the comma this morning. The comma is like one of the most used punctuation marks, but people get really confused about it. They put commas where commas should not be and then leave them out where they should be. So we're going to go over the rules when you would use the comma and when you would not use the comma, and hopefully clarify some of those things so you feel more comfortable. When you put it in there, you know it belongs. All right, so let's look at the first rule. So hopefully you know this one already. You've heard it and you're aware of it. If you have two independent, complete, standalone sentences, all right, you have to have complete sentence and a complete sentence. You can connect them with a comma and a fanboy. And if you watch the semicolon video, you remember the fanboys are for, and, nor, but, or, and yet. So what does that look like? Let's take a quick look. All right, I was interested in taking the class. That's an independent clause, complete sentence, comma, so I looked up the schedule online. I looked up the schedule online, again, an independent clause, complete sentence. So the comma conjunction, one of the fanboys, in this case, so, connects the two. So that's where you would use a comma. Now, where people get confused is they see a fanboy and they just automatically throw in the comma. Like, ooh, there's a conjunction. I got to put a comma. What does that look like? So here you see we have basically the same sentence, right? I was interested in taking the class, so I looked up the schedule online. The I is missing, and so you don't have that independent clause, right? Looked up the schedule doesn't have a subject, so it's not a complete sentence. What that actually is, it's called a compound verb, but that's kind of grammar-y. But I was interested, so looked. They're both verbs, right? There's no subject there. So because there's not two independent clauses, I don't put the comma, even if there is a fanboy there. Hopefully you got that. So the second rule is we put in a comma if we've brought a prepositional phrase or a dependent clause, which we'll talk about, from the end of the sentence to the beginning, the front of the sentence. So what does that look like? Let's take a look first at a prepositional phrase. Okay, so here you have, I stopped at the bank yesterday after work. That's kind of our original sentence. What I do is I take the prepositional phrase, which is yesterday after work. I always think of prepositional phrases as like directional phrases, like when or where, under the bed, through the house, yesterday, after work. So it becomes yesterday after work. I brought the prepositional phrase to the beginning, yesterday after work, comma, I stopped at the bank. So that's the first example. So check out number 2. I turned in my work early. So there you have a complete sentence, independent clause. Then you have the word because I was leaving for vacation. Now, I was leaving for vacation is a complete sentence, but you put the word because on there, that makes it dependent. In other words, it needs something else to be a complete sentence. Because I was leaving for vacation is not a complete sentence. That's called the dependent clause. So that becomes, if you move the dependent clause to the front of the sentence, it becomes like this. Because I was leaving for vacation, comma, I turned in my work early. So whether the prepositional phrase is moved to the beginning or the dependent clause is moved to the beginning, you offset that or you put the comma in. If those stay at the end, then there's no comma necessary. Rule number 3 is to use a comma after every item in a series of 3 or more, whether it's one-word items or it's a list of clauses or phrases. I think this is one of the ones that most people understand, but we do want to make a couple clarifications on it. So example 1 is with just singular items. While I was at the store, my wife told me to pick up chips, salsa, jalapenos, peanut butter, and jelly. So the comma after the word peanut butter is what is called the Oxford comma. And the purpose of the Oxford comma, while some people say it's not necessary, we call those people annoying people. All the cool cats say it's necessary because it avoids confusion, right? In this case, right, if I was at the store and there was no Oxford comma there, then I'd be like, oh, does she want the jar of peanut butter and jelly that's together? the peanut butter and jelly in one jar, or does she want a jar of peanut butter and a jar of jelly? Which is it? And then I'd have to text her, and I'd be standing there waiting for her to text, but she left her phone somewhere else in the house, and I would be there while the ice cream melts in my cart, wondering which do I get. With the comma after the word peanut butter, then I totally know it's a separate item. And that's why the Oxford comma is so necessary. How about with a list of clauses? All right, so the second example here is before they visited their friend, I told my daughters that they shouldn't climb on the furniture, that they shouldn't chase the cat around the house, and that they must not ask to bring anything home. So you see in this case, I have a list that's consistent every single time, right? It starts with the word that, and then it has the thought or the idea after that. That structure is always the same, just to be consistent and have the list be a uniform list, but that's how I would set that off with commas. Let's look at phrases. So in this one, I have a list of prepositional phrases. Remember we said those are like directional. In order to find something, I always look in every drawer, through all of our closets, under stacks of papers, and in the garage. So I'm telling you in sequence the direction that I would look or where I would look for each of these things, whatever I'm searching for. True story, right? True story. So those are all the common types of lists that you might find. So number 4 is that you use commas to set off non-essential information in a sentence, right? So the idea here is if there is information that you can take out of the sentence and it doesn't change the core meaning of the sentence, then you have to set that off with commas. Let's see an example of that. So number 1, right? My favorite band with a couple of freelance musicians played their best songs at the concert last night. So in this case, that detail of a couple freelance musicians is not essential to the fact that my favorite band played their best songs at the concert last night. So if I took this out, it would just read, my favorite band played their best songs at the concert last night. All right, so you still get the core of everything that I was trying to say. I took out the non-essential information. So that's how I know if I have something in there that's essential, I have to put in commas. Let's look at a quick example of essential information as to why you would not put commas in there. So in example 2, right, the politician at the center podium didn't know what he was talking about. The essential information in there is what? Right, at the center podium. If I don't have that in there, then I don't know which politician that you're referring to. So if I put commas at the politician comma at the center podium comma, that would mean that that's non-essential information. But then it would read the politician didn't know what he was talking about. And if it was a stage full of politicians, you'd be like, well, which one? There was 5 up there. In this case, at the center podium, clarifies and gives you essential information. Number 5, in the same way, commas set off appositives as well. Now, I'm not a big grammar term guy, but appositive is one you should know. An appositive is simply, right, it's a noun or a phrase that renames a nearby noun. So for instance, like the word dude is an appositive for bruh. So you can put it in place of that noun, or it just gives further clarification of the noun. Here's how that works. Okay, so example 1, the Padres, comma, the last place team in the league, that's the appositive for Padres, shouldn't have skipped spring training. So the idea is I could take out the last place team in the league and the core idea is still there. In other words, this appositive is kind of non-essential. The Padres shouldn't have skipped spring training. I added in a less specific detail about the Padres. Naming them is as specific as I could get, and I just gave you some more information. So if it is essential information in terms of the appositive, then there's no comma there. So let's take a look at that. Okay, so and this is where people get confused because they're like, well, why commas in some and not the other? In this case, let's look at this example. My sister Wendy used to be a graphic artist. There's no comma after sister and there's no comma after Wendy because I'm getting more specific. I'm telling you which sister. If I just said my sister used to be a graphic artist and I had multiple sisters, you would not know which one I was referring to. So I added more specific information by saying her name and then I would not have commas there. Now, if I switched the order, if I said Wendy, in other words, I gave you the most specific thing, her name, and then added that information, my sister, then that's non-essential, and you'd have commas. So Wendy, comma, my sister, comma, used to be a graphic artist. So it all depends on if you're getting more specific or less specific as to whether you should put commas in there. All right? All right, number 6, you put a comma whenever you say someone's name to them, or when you have some sort of like introductory or interruptive or closing word or phrase somewhere at the beginning, middle, or end of your sentence. So let's look at using someone's name first. So in example 1, I used the same sentence and I just moved around the name to show you how the commas would change. Napoleon, like anyone could even know that. So comma after Napoleon there. Like anyone, Napoleon could even know that. So comma after anyone and after Napoleon. And then the last one, like anyone could even know that, Napoleon. So the comma after that. So you can see when Napoleon was addressed in each sentence, the commas followed suit. So let's also then look at like introductory, interruptive, or closing words. All right, example 2, I used the word of course as my introductory, interruptive, or closing phrase, and I moved it around just like I did before. Of course, I really want to eat at a Mexican restaurant, or I could say, I really want to eat, of course, at a Mexican restaurant. Or lastly, I really want to eat at a Mexican restaurant, of course. No, I really do. Please, I do. At any rate, you can see that wherever I move it in the sentence is offset then by commas. Okay, number 7 is where we have to talk about quotation marks. You use a comma to offset who is saying the quote, or if the quote comes first, you have to offset the quote with the comma from whom it is being said. So let's look at an example of how that would work. All right, so you can see here we just moved the person saying it around the sentence. Kip said, comma, like anyone could even know that, Napoleon. Or we could put it in the middle, like anyone, said Kip, could even know that, Napoleon. And then the last one, like anyone could even know that, Napoleon, said Kip. So that's how you offset a speaker from the quote that's being said. And number 8, the last one, finally, commas are used to offset dates, locations, and titles for people's names. So let's look at how those play out. All right, so in this case, we have the date and the year. June 4th, comma, 2020, comma, was the last day of finals this year. There you go. All right, so that's the first one for dates. All right, in this case, we have a city and state. So many people visit San Diego, comma, California, comma, for their vacation destination. So you offset the city and the state, or the state and the nation with commas in the sentence. All right, so number 3 would be like if you have a title like PhD or MD, something like that. The study was presented by Xander Bravestone, comma, PhD, comma, at the Jumanji Institute of Video Games. So you offset titles like that when it comes inside of a sentence, all right? So that's most of the comma rules. I didn't cover like numbers like 1000, comma, 962, but those are the most common comma rules that we're gonna review today. So good luck in using those correctly. There's nothing as beautiful as a grammatical sentence. Well, there's lots of things as beautiful as a grammatical sentence, but they're also nice to look at when you're a reader. So keep that in mind. Do your best to use them right. Until next time. Thanks for watching this video. It would be awesome if you could subscribe to the channel. Here are some other videos in the writing workshop playlist where it can help you become a better writer, how to write essays and other things that I've explored with you. And then, of course, some additional playlists just to check out for funsies. We'll see you soon.